If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
We are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch. And tonight, in the next episode of our Long War series, we're going to be discussing Secession 2.0 movements. Renewed pushes for independence and state sovereignty fracture national cohesion after 9/11 2.0. However, before we get into the main topic and the sit rep and the conflicted question, I want to give everybody another quick reminder. 2025, year over year, Carnival had a 49% increase in their wholesale cost of beef. They've just been hit with another 15%. If you put it together, you're looking at 64% increase in barely 54 weeks. Unbeknownst to me, when I first found this out, apparently some states, when you sell somebody a subscription for hard goods, you're not allowed to change it for at least 12 months. So Carnival is selling their current inventory that was purchased at the lower wholesale cost. They're holding the line on those numbers, but they will run out either on January 15th or potentially before then, and the prices are going to go up. If you want to protect yourself against out of control food inflation, especially for something that's super high quality, like Carnival, head on over to carnival.com, sign up for a subscription. And if you're an annual subscriber to SDN Guardians, forward your receipt to support@survivaldispatch.com. I'll tack 30 days on free every time you spend over $99. So if you sign up for a subscription at Carnival, you'll never pay for your Guardian membership ever again, but it only applies to annual members, not month to month. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the conflicted question of the night. For those of you not familiar with this, conflictedthegame.com, 14 card decks set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. Most of the questions have some element of morality, hence the name conflicted. A group of refugees appeared at the barricade near Morgan's house one day, begging for food and water. They were given little and asked to leave. Some of the refugees were upset they weren't given more. Judging by their attitude, they would probably be back, this time to try take things by force. If you were at the barricade that day and you were faced with this situation, how would you handle it? Interesting question. Definitely some element of morality to this one. Hang with me till the end of tonight's episode, and I will give you my answer. I want to see your answers in the live chat or in the comment section down below. And as per usual, this is going out to 9 different platforms, and I get all the comments aggregated in one spot in my administration dashboard here. And Tuesday night, as y'all know, is typically Khalid's night. He will be back next week, especially on the Tuesday night. I can't tell you what he's up to. He's going to have to wait until he has clearance to do so. You might see him this week, but you'll definitely see him next week. And definitely on Tuesday night, he'll be back to being the Command 11 sit rep. So speaking of sit reps, for those of you who didn't catch this, I put a poll out in the sit rep on Substack today where you get to choose, or got to choose, I should say, whether or not we did a sit rep tonight. And the reason I asked this same question last night is because Jeff MD has been very generous with his time. And when we go past the 2-hour mark, we are then cutting into his dinner time with his family. So if we don't do the sit rep and Jeff is on, which is Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if we don't do the sit rep, he can stay through to the end. If we do the sit rep, it's kind of unlikely he'll make it all the way to the end. So I'm giving the choice to you, our audience. But today, check it out. 90% of the votes, and the only people who can vote, by the way, are guardians. This is below the paywall break on our Substack. Got to choose it. So I'll put this out through the week, and if for whatever reason y'all want to jump right into the main topic because of Jeff's expertise and time, we can do that. But I'm making this your call. So with that being said, let me pull something else up because it's the 5-year anniversary of Ashley Babbitt being murdered. And my friend Travis from Oklahoma, I don't want to give out his last name. He's in law enforcement. He's a guardian. He's a super guy. He is not even slightly unhinged whatsoever. And he sends me this and he said, you know, I don't know if this is a bot. I don't know if it's somebody who's just an asshole, but it makes my blood boil. And then he sent it to me, and of course it had the same effect on me, made my blood boil. This is brutal. So Ashley Babbitt was shot. She did not die instantly or even very shortly after. Ashley Babbitt fell back into a crowd of traders still alive. The traders said, oh shit, these guys shooting, and they turned and fled. Guess who got stepped on? Ashley Babbitt was found on the floor later by paramedics who could not get to her in sufficient time within that golden hour. Ashley Babbitt died at a hospital after being transported. Her last words should have been, "Don't tread on me." And then at the bottom of the image, it says, she FA'd and she found out. Number one, this is not a truthful account of what happened that day. Number two, this is a really good example of the mental illness that's run rampant in our country. And creating this chasm between us and them has been all part of this 5th generation warfare that China started waging against us in 1949. And you know what? Hats off to them. You did it. You succeeded. You managed to divide America culturally to the point where there will never be reconciliation between the two different sides. Now, with that being said, this will come to a head because historically it always does when you have two very, opposed cultures in one geography, and it's not going to end well for the other side. I'm not advocating violence like they engage in whatsoever, but tonight's discussion on Secession 2.0 really speaks to the sovereignty being returned to states through balkanization and all the stuff that comes after that. And again, I am not promoting any type of violence or anything whatsoever, but this stuff here, this is demonic evil in our country. So with that being said, I've got to mention a couple other quick things before I forget. So y'all know that families on Coronado Island in San Diego have reached out to me. Some of them are Navy SEALs. Some of them, it's the wife of the Navy SEAL who reached out to me, and they've been cased by jihadis. It's very high on the 9/11 2.0 attack list. One of the wives there who's been working tirelessly to try and get somebody to listen, finally got a couple people at DHS to listen to what she has to say. So if you're located on Coronado Island, or you have family on Coronado Island, or you're somewhere in that area, if you call this number at the DHS and express your concern over jihadis casing military families' homes and the potential of them being attacked either on or shortly after 9/11 2.0, if you email support@survivaldispatch.com, I will give you that phone number, because the girl who managed to find these people who were actually willing to listen was told by both individuals that the more people who call, the more we can run this up the flagpole and get somebody at a higher level to weigh in and actually do something. And what can they do? They can harden security. Your greatest strength's usually your greatest weakness, right? So you've got this small bridge leads from the mainland over to Coronado. If bad guys went in and then detonated the bridge behind them, it would be really hard for many types of different first responders to get there, because they'd essentially have to come by, boat or air. but it's a strength as well. It's a choke point. It's a fatal funnel is really what it is. And if you all call because you're fit the criteria I just put out there, that bridge can potentially not just be protected, but under 24/7, 365 surveillance and guard, which realistically is what it should be with these shit bags. This is so bad. 3 of the 6 families who contacted me, and I mentioned this before, but I want you all to hear this, have been confronted by one of these jihadis who's taking videos, taking pictures, and stood there and literally looked through them with their eyes. Like they have no fear. They don't give a crap if anybody sees them and puts 2 and 2 together. They want extreme retribution against our GWAT vets, especially any of our operators, which would include Navy SEALs, of course, Coronado Island. So again, if you're in that area, you're tied to that area, you live in that area, send an email, support@survivaldispatch.com. I will give you the phone number at the DHS that you can call. You will get somebody for a change who's willing to listen to what you have to say. So with that being said, I think that's all the stuff I wanted to knock out right off the bat. So a lot of heavy stuff per usual. So because I'm by myself tonight, because Clee's not back until next week, I figured, you know what? We discussed so much heavy stuff through the week. I did a special report on Maduro on Sunday night instead of doing my funny the Sea Heaven show, pardon me. So I got to throw a couple funny things at y'all just to kick it off, and then we'll get into the sit rep and the main topic here. So the Minnesota fraud ship is sinking. 40 seconds.
This happened because I helped your people commit fraud.
Sorry, Tim. You cannot run for governor again.
They're coming for you and your husband next. Husband, brother, brother, husband, whatever the fuck.
Retard!
Man, there's some people out there who've got some fantastic senses of humor. Very well done. So with that being said, a few posts that I threw in to the sit rep, but I did it after I published the brief. So I don't have a whole lot of information on the first couple ones. They just caught my eye. So this is the founder of Code Pink, Medea Benjamin, has lost the last remaining modicum of her mind that wasn't destroyed by hallucinogenics in the 1960s. She insists that President Trump is a bigger threat than dictator, narco-terrorist Nicolas Maduro. It's 41 seconds long. I'm going to play the whole thing. I cannot remember if there's profanity. Apologies for not giving you a warning on the last one. But pretty much anytime I pull up one of these videos from these psychos, you can pretty much count on there being, some cuss words. So if you have youngins close to you, you might want to put headphones on or go to a different room. But listen to this nutcase. And by the way, you can see across the bottom, she says, "This is an urgent message."
This is an urgent message. There is a rogue president who is threatening the security of the United States and the world community. And no, it is not Nicolas Maduro. It is Donald Trump. He has kidnapped the head of state of Venezuela and is now saying the U.S. is going to run that country. He is also threatening to invade Cuba, Colombia, Iran, even Greenland. He must be stopped. And the first way to do it is to get our senators to vote on a war powers resolution that says that the U.S. military cannot be engaged in hostilities in Venezuela. It's introduced by Democrat Tim Kaine and Republican Rand Paul. This is an urgent message.
So what's interesting, but no surprise whatsoever, is Tim Kaine and Rand Paul are both on the list released by the Venezuelan government as being on the dole, being paid by the corrupt Venezuelan Maduro regime to work against Donald Trump. And now they want to come to the table with a bill that says, well, you can't deploy the military into Venezuela. Shocking, right? Absolutely shocking. Okay, you want to see what I mean by SSRI mental illness? This stuff is absolutely mind-blowing. For those of you who've been following our podcast for any period of time, you've heard these numbers before, but let me just throw this out there for y'all. In the early 1950s, we had approximately 550,000 inpatient beds in psychiatric care facilities. That number today is 40,000. And what's really crazy is people who have anxiety, other things going on in their, mental health, they go to a psychiatrist. Sometimes they go to just an MD, and they immediately start writing them scripts for these SSRIs. Do you know what the two biggest side effects are of SSRIs? Suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation. So I was talking to somebody the other day going, I can't remember if I mentioned this on our podcast or not, but I said, you know what? We're already living in the zombie apocalypse, because all of these people who've had their mental health issues exacerbated by SSRIs, not helped, exacerbated by them, are no different than zombies. These are programmed zombies. Tell me this isn't just like beyond the pale. Imagine being a Venezuelan celebrating the liberation of your country after decades of communist oppression and clicking on social media to see some pink-haired American liberal screaming about how your oppressor should be put back in power, meaning Maduro put back. This is 14 seconds, a lot of profanity. Like I said, protect your youngins' ears.
Trump said the United States will be running Venezuela. Woo! A colony. Whoa, imperialism. All for what? So a fucking multinational corporation can get profit. Whoa!
I'm going to play this twice. Take a close look at the eyes. These are what, and other people are catching on to this, by the way, but I was probably one of the first podcasters to bring this up constantly. These are SSRI eyes. Once you know the look, you can pick it out a country mile away, but let's listen to this nutcase one more time.
Trump said the United States will be running Venezuela. Whoa! A colony. Whoa! Imperialism. All for what? So a fucking multinational corporation can get profit. Whoa!
Wow. I mean, it just blows me away. Just absolutely blows me away that we don't just have a handful of people, right? There was a study, actually, it was like a long ongoing poll where they asked people of every demographic in America, are you taking SSRIs? And 62% of white women in America between the ages of 20 and 50, 62% admitted to taking SSRIs. If 62% admitted it, the real number is probably 82%. And when you look at a lot of the videos of Venezuelans celebrating Maduro being kicked out of office, there's a lot of them that flat out say that white liberal American women need to STFU. They just don't want to hear it anymore. It's we have a serious mental health crisis on our hands. Cannot overstate that. So next one up, this actually is where the SITREP officially begins. Elon Musk, they're doing the same thing to me that they did to Trump, which is they're making it sound like if you kill me, you're a hero. What they're doing is evil. 1 minute, 39 seconds.
At this point, I think I'm at the top of the list for a lot of homicidal maniacs.
And the more the mainstream media talks about you in this way,
yes,
and says you're a Nazi, and
they're doing the same thing to me that they did to Trump.
Yeah,
which is that they're making it sound like if you kill me, you're a hero. That's what they're doing is evil.
They're also doing the same thing where they're completely distorting who you are and people are going along with it. And just like we're talking about Trump derangement syndrome, people have Elon derangement syndrome. I see it.
Yeah.
I see where people can't see the forest for the trees.
Right. And it's like I'm the same person that I was a year ago. Nothing's changed, really. Like I didn't suddenly become a completely different human.
Right.
But if you read the sort of legacy mainstream media, their propaganda stream is that I am a completely different human.
Right.
But I didn't get like a brain transplant, in a year. So, and if you say like 2 years ago, I was like a hero of the left.
Yeah.
So how can I go from hero to villain at age 53 suddenly?
MSNBC, CNN.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
They use the
Associated
machine.
propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they try to demonize you too.
They try to demonize anybody who goes against their batshit insane narratives. But I because I don't have a panel tonight, I can't ask the questions that I would normally ask. So I'm just going to answer a couple of questions myself. One of the questions I put into the brief was, who's driving this rhetoric and what incentives reward escalation? So clearly, whatever you want to call them, the money kings, the cabal, are the ones promoting this because Elon's a powerful guy. Trump is a powerful guy. Joe Rogan has a ton of influence. And I think Elon said it best right out of the gate on this video, that they're preaching to their mentally ill audience, not these guys, the globalists, the Democrats, whatever you want to call them, the rhinos even, that if you kill any of these people, Charlie Kirk, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, you are then a hero of the movement. And the problem is that when you combine the explosion of mental illness with this type of propaganda, it costs people their lives. I mean, we talked about it last week, and then we saw some more evidence this week. Nick Shirley exposed the Somali fraud. His life is in danger. And, we touched on that last week. So you want to talk about insanity in America? Check this out. This is the tenant advisor for Ma'am Dammy. We're going to take homes from white people and give them to people of color.
The reality is that for centuries we've
look at the eyes. Seriously, look at the eyes. Do you see how there's no soul behind those eyes? Those are SSRI eyes as well.
really treated property as an individualized good.
I want to back something up here as well. Check this out. Watch the eyes. Okay, right there. Let me go forwards again. Keep watching the eyes. Okay, from here, what happens to her eyes? Up to the right, up to the right, up to the right, up to the right, up to the right. Okay, straight ahead. The right side of the brain is the creative side of the brain. The left side is your data bank, essentially. We were taught when we were interviewing people that you have 2 or 3 people in the room conducting the interview, and while somebody else is asking a question, you focus on the body language of the person being interviewed. Putting your eyes up to the right once or twice, not a big deal. Constantly putting your eyes up and to the right means that you're telling a lie. You're making up a story. You're making up a fib. So she's literally concocting this narrative in her head as she preaches I'm trying to think of what the word is, the righteousness of redistributing wealth. This is textbook communism, for crying out loud. Let me back it up at the beginning because it's not very long, and I play it uninterrupted this time.
The reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Wow. I took my watch off because I knew this was going to happen, and I knew it would just be harassing the shit out of me, going nuts, saying that I had a high heart rate, irregular heart rate, whatever. But this snotty little know-nothing is Ma'am Dammy's advisor on essentially how to take property away from white people to give it to other people, because it's racist. Everything's racist, right? But it's not racist to shit all over white people. How could anybody stay in New York City knowing that this is what's coming? Many of them won't, right? Many of them come here to the South. I mean, people used to say that Florida started at Jacksonville and ended at St. Augustine, and everything south there was an extension of New York. Time before, we were in West Palm Beach, all kinds of New Yorkers around us, good people. And they said, well, yeah, we've made West Palm Beach, New York City South. And that's no joke. So what happens when you institute, communist socialist policies? You create white flight in this case, and they leave. And then the city collapses on itself. It's the exact same thing that happened in Detroit. So if you think back, late 60s, early 70s, Detroit proper put massive taxes on white people to pay for infrastructure and things for welfare programs and black people. So they left, they went to the suburbs, and then they left the suburbs and they went even further away. What happened to Detroit after that? A once great city completely imploded. If you shit on people, good chance that they're going to leave. And by the way, I just saw somebody said YouTube blocking comments. So when everything gets aggregated here in the admin panel, I don't get to see the YouTube warnings. I have to look up at the other monitor above me here. So somebody said leaving New York means we give it to the Muslims. YouTube censored it. So I'm going to approve that. And that person is not kidding. I can't decipher. Somebody else wrote something that's very nonsensical. Okay, here's some more. This is not a safe podcast for youngins. Scotty says her butt plug is stuck. And I'm sure that was in reference to the pink girl losing her mind. That poor girl has daddy issues and overbearing mother issues written all over it. Wow. YouTube censored that. Everything I'm reading has been censored by YouTube. 3 words from Shenandoah George. She is nuts. Censored by YouTube. I'm approving these as I go through them. Somebody said, Husker said, lady looks like a dude. Censored by YouTube. I mean, and I could keep scrolling on and on. It's unbelievable. Friggin' commie tube, right? So anyway, yeah, a good point. Whoever said leaving New York leaves it to the Muslims. I don't know that New York City is going to do too well and survive this. They're following not just the same blueprint for Detroit, but in more modern terms, they're following the blueprint for London, England. So moving on to the next one. Oh my God, this is precisely why I took my watch off tonight. Minnesota isn't the only one changing its flag. Why are cities and states across America adopting the same 8-point star, a symbol prominent in Islam? What are the odds? 1 minute, 17 seconds.
I don't know about you, but I'm actually really happy Elon Musk is finally talking about this, but there is so much more to this story. Put the Minnesota flag back, he says. But Americans need to pay attention to this. The flag features an 8-point star, a symbol prominent in Islam, and we're seeing it show up in flags all across the nation. The original Minnesota flag was replaced with a flag that resembles the flag of Somalia, a flat blue design with that 8-point star. Now, this is the same flag that Jackie Toberoff and I have been reporting on for almost 2 years now. Minnesota's original flag, there was nothing wrong with it, reflected the history of the land, a Native American on horseback, and a farmer. Now, this, of course, comes on the heels of Minnesota's massive fraud scandal, so now people are starting to pay attention to this flag, which is great. But Americans need to understand, again, this isn't just happening in Minnesota. Take a look at Reno, Nevada, before and after. Take notice, 8-point star. Look at Kent, Ohio, before and after. Now look at the city of Hutchinson in Kansas. They've actually scrubbed much of the internet of what the previous flag looked like, but it resembles their city seal. They said it was too basic. Now, Jacqueline Toberoff wrote an entire article in 2024 with all the links of the changes and then proposed flags as well. You can check it out. So what are the chances they all just happen to have this same 8-point star?
Wow. So, I mean, I think it's a foregone conclusion, but if this absolutely infuriates you, put a 1 in the live chat, whatever platform that you're on. Like I said, it's probably a foregone conclusion, but I want to see how many people actually engage on that. Next one up. Always remember that the media doesn't sell the news. It sells narratives. 23 seconds.
Look, I'm going to show y'all something. There's nobody around these people. They're recording for TV. Look, they're down here like, come on, cheer louder. Cheer more. And then you're going to see this on TV and you're going to think that there's like 1 billion people down here. But look, there's really not. Look,
Yeah, I won't run a back-to-back poll, I guess, but I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody out there in the audience. So the last post for tonight's sit rep before we get into the main topic. Democrats, I hope you know you lost the Hispanic vote for generations. Protesting the capture of Maduro and asking for his release has offended every single Hispanic voter that there is in the country. 36 seconds.
Democrats, I hope you know you lost the Hispanic vote for generations. Protesting the capture of Maduro and asking for his release has offended every single Hispanic voter that there is in the country. Every Hispanic voter knows somebody or has family members from Venezuela or South America. Everybody knows how horrible the dictatorship of Maduro and Chavez has been for Latin Americans. You just keep proving to everyone over and over again that you don't know what you're doing, that you don't care about anyone. You only care about your optics and what it means to be opposed to the Republican Party.
Well, I wouldn't say oppose the Republican Party because the Republican Party is full of bad actors as well, but opposed to real Americans, TM Randy Nance. That's the best way to state it as far as I'm concerned. So with that being said, let's jump into the main topic tonight. So when Khalid and I wrote this 144 episode series called The Long War, we created what are called 12 story arcs. And in each story arc has 12 episodes. So this is episode number 2 of the 8th arc. So we're on episode number 86. Usually when a channel does a series, we've done this many times ourselves and failed and banged our head against the wall saying, oh my God, how do we fix this? People who didn't have a chance to watch the first episode don't watch the second, don't watch the third, so on and so forth. So we had to get creative as far as how do we do each one of these videos to make them valuable to whoever watches them, whether they watch the entire series, part of the series, in order, out of order, doesn't matter. So before I answer that, let me preface it by saying this. We are a survival and prepping company. When I acquired Survival Dispatch, I've owned it for half of its life now. When I acquired Survival Dispatch, the focus was primitive survival. 83% of Americans live in urban centers. So it's not that I'm against primitive survival, but it's just not relative to the vast majority of Americans outside of watching a show like Alone for entertainment purposes. So we made that pivot first. Then we made the pivot to start discussing things like being gas station ready. Those of you who have been with us for any point in time, probably 4 times a year normally, we cover gas stations, because gas stations and convenience stores are both top 5 areas to be assaulted. And when you combine both of them together in the wrong part of town, it's a really bad spot. And since I'm by myself tonight and I have a little bit of time, I actually want to share a story on being gas station ready. Then I'll tell you how we stitched all 144 episodes together, and we'll kick this thing off. Tony Blauer is a very good friend of mine, and he is by far and away the global subject matter expert on sudden violence. This guy is incredible. He teaches people what to do in the seconds before the shit hits the fan. So he has this thing called D123. So D1 is detect a problem from a distance and avoid it. The best fight is the fight that doesn't happen. The next one, D2, is to devalue yourself, because bad guys only want one of 3 things: life, property. I'm trying to remember what the other one is. Body. So life, body, possessions. And then the third one is to actually defend yourself. So yes, he's a martial artist, but that's not his claim to fame. It's on dialing this in, right? And it's all about situational awareness, et cetera, et cetera. So he gets a call a few years ago, and this lady says, "Hey, Tony, I took one of your workshops 10 years ago or something. You probably don't remember me. My name is such and such. You saved my life last night." And Tony's like, "Oh, well, how did I save your life?" And she said, "Well, I was on a conference call at work, and I was on my cell phone, and I wanted to get heading home. So the sun was set. I'm in my car. I'm on my cell phone on this conference call, and the dashboard goes off. I need fuel." So she pulls off the interstate, pulls into a gas station, gets out of the gas station, and then all of a sudden realizes she's in the middle of the hood. She's still on the phone for the conference call. So she thinks back to Tony Blauer, devalue yourself, right? So she starts screaming into the phone with a whole bunch of, cuss words, that pretending that it was her bank / credit card company. "You better turn my card back on again. I paid this bill in full last week, and now my car's got no gas. I've got no cash, and my dang credit card doesn't work. You better turn it back on." Well, before she started this spiel, these 3 guys took an interest in her, were walking towards her. As soon as she said that, okay, so the car has no fuel. She has no cash. Her credit card doesn't work. They walked away, and she survived, which is absolutely amazing. The second one that I'll give you for D3 is Tony lives in LA, and he's in busy traffic, and he pulls up to a stoplight. There's a bunch of cars in front of him. Somebody plows into him from behind, drives his car into the car in front of him. He gets out of his car. The driver and the driver's 2 buddies of the car in front of him get out, and the guy looks at his bumper like this and looks back at Tony and says, "I'm going to kick your ass." And Tony goes, Tony's not a big guy. He's like 5'8", maybe 180 pounds, something like that. But again, a very deadly guy. But Tony, this other guy, by the way, was a gorilla. And Tony says, whoa, time out. There's 3 reasons I can't fight you right now. And he interrupted the guy's OODA loop, right? So observe, orient, decide, act. Everything that we do always is in this OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. The guy stopped because Tony interrupted his OODA loop. Like, he actually stopped to hear what Tony had to say. He sucker punched him, hit him on the chin, knocked him out cold. The other 2 guys jumped back in the car. End of problem. So he's absolutely brilliant when it comes to that stuff. But my point was, as a survival prepping company, since I acquired this company, our focus has been urban survival. Last spring, I looked at my spreadsheet with over 4,000 videos in it. I sliced and diced it and discovered that 42% of our videos were on the topic of terrorism in one context or another. I reached out to Khalid, we teamed up, and that's how we kicked this thing off. So back to the series with all these episodes, how do you keep people engaged without thinking, "Oh, I didn't see the previous one, doesn't matter." Every single episode in this series predicated on one thing: post 9/11 2.0. I will do this as quickly as I can for those of you who are not familiar with this. So Khalid and his team of over 400 men, boots on the ground in Pakistan and Afghanistan, have compromised over 80 of 120 plus terrorist training camps in Afghanistan. His intelligence is not from somebody else, it's not through the grapevine, it's firsthand intelligence. And in 2008, there was the attack on Mumbai. And if you want to see what a CCTA looks like from a movie perspective, watch Hotel Mumbai. It's a really accurate rendition of what happened and what has now become the blueprint for CCTAs, complex coordinated terrorist attacks. So what happened in Mumbai, the guys come ashore on a Zodiac. They get off the boat. They've got bags full of weapons and grenades and so on and so forth. And they split into 5 groups. One of the groups goes to a train station, and in the first 2 minutes inside the door, they killed 50 people with full auto machine guns, AK-47s. While they were attacking Mumbai, a city of 18 million, by the way, which was brought to its knees for over 60 hours, a command and control team in East Pakistan, Northeast Pakistan, and another one in Afghanistan were monitoring live news reports and social media. Now, by the way, CCTAs, they also have body cams on for the command and control guys. And what they were doing is telling them, hey, just wait right where you are. There's first responders very close to you. So the primary attack for a soft target is to draw in the first responders and then kill more of them with VBIEDs, grenades, sometimes suicide vests. Didn't happen that way in Mumbai. Probably won't happen that way that early on 9/11 2.0 either. But point being is they picked off all of these soft targets, but they were pivoting as they went based on what the command and control guys were telling them. Go here, go there, do this, do that. So they come together at the hotel, the Taj Hotel, and they sieged it. And, you know, there were hundreds of people overall during the entire attack that were killed. But the way it was unsieged was Indian commandos landed on the roof. And I want to say there were 300 rooms in that hotel. And they kicked doors one by one, all 300 of them, till they eliminated all 9 of the jihadis, or 9 of the jihadis, and only one was left living. And he was executed after he was found guilty. So 9/11 2.0 is Mumbai 2008 on steroids. It's Paris 2015 on steroids. And for the people who say to you, you're crazy, this is all just conspiracy theory. Okay. We know that Mayorkas, his DHS, let 200,000 special interest aliens into our country. To be an SIA, that's a special interest alien, you have to be a terrorist or a known terrorist associate. Then a few weeks ago, Joe Kent in front of Congress says, well, we have additional numbers here where we have highly trained jihadi soldiers. 2,000 came from Afghanistan and were set free. Another 16,000 came from other countries, and they were all Al-Qaeda and ISIS and highly trained operatives. And they were released into the homeland. Anybody who thinks that you can leave the front door open for 4 years, flood your country full of people who hate your guts and want retribution, and nothing will ever happen. I'll tell you what, I got some waterfront property for you in Arizona for those people who believe that. So you'll hear people like Tulsi Gabbard, you'll hear Joe Kent, head of the NCTC, National Counterterrorism Center, say this is not a matter of if this thing is going to happen. It's when is it going to happen? So what it looks like is you have 10 to 15 tier 2 cities, population 100K to 500K, attacked in unison across the country. Each city being attacked has 10 to 15 sleeper cells. Each sleeper cell has 4 to 12 jihadis. It's basically 2,000 to 3,000 highly trained Islamic army soldiers. Everybody falls under the banner of IA now. They all got together because the enemy of my enemy is a friend of mine. So Taliban, TTP, Al-Qaeda, AP, which is Arabian Peninsula, ISIS, ISKP, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, all of these guys have got together for this 9/11 2.0 attack on us. So when they go and they hit the initial soft targets, especially schools, they've made a point of saying they want to kill the most vulnerable in our society. Here's a simple example that I've given numerous times because it is in the intel. You got two guys in an HVAC van show up at a school. They pull a ladder off. They put it up against the building. They go on the roof. They cut the ductwork open. They put time-released sarin nerve gas canisters in. They seal it back up again. They get down. A couple minutes later, the sarin gets dispersed through the HVAC ductwork. Within 3 minutes of inhaling or it touching your skin, because it'll go subcutaneous, you're dead. It's a nerve agent. So the signals in your body get scrambled. Your brain is saying, move my right hand, and your left foot's kicking. Well, the same thing happens, within 3 minutes, your brain's saying to your heart, pump blood, and it's your right leg is moving instead because that current is going somewhere else. So then they just sit there and they wait. And they wait for the first responders. And the first responders show up, and that van is full of bombs. Big bombs like the ones that were captured in Pakistan over the weekend. And Khalid will give you first-hand intel on that, by the way. That was part of his team. Kudos to them. They'll blow it up and they'll kill a whole bunch of first responders who are there. Number one. Number two, we all have this thing called normalcy bias. The human brain strives to get back to normalcy as quick as possible. So somebody, let's say, who's on the X, not sarin nerve gas, but kinetic weapons, and they survive, it's common for people to go, thank God I survived. Oh, look, here comes the cavalry. Those are probably not the cavalry. We've had a record number of National Guard armories broken into, uniforms stolen. Same goes for police uniforms, paramedic uniforms from dry cleaners across the country. We've had Humvees stolen. There was a few stolen, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago in one of the LA armories. You've got cop cars being stolen. You've got stickers for cop cars being stolen. You've got ambulances that have been stolen, all of which will be used to pose as the cavalry. And this is not a new tactic. Jihadis have been using this for decades. If you remember nothing else from the Long War series from Survival Dispatch, if you are so unfortunate to be caught on the X, but fortunate enough to survive, get as far away as fast as you possibly can. Because again, what you perceive to be first responders won't be first responders. It'll be like the guys on 10/7 in Israel who posed as Israeli cops and stopped people from exfilling in their cars and then murdered everybody while they were sitting in their cars. So now imagine you've got this command and control team, probably several teams in Afghanistan because of the number of jihadis on the loose, saying, hey, don't go to target A, go to target B. Wait where you are because first responders are on their way. And basically coordinating 10 to 15 sleeper cells in 10 to 15 tier 2 cities. Instead of converging on a hotel like they did in Mumbai, they will converge on the one and only level 1 trauma center in that tier 2 city. Tier 2 cities typically do not have any surrounding areas with significant infrastructure to offer what's referred to as mutual aid. That could be law enforcement, could be paramedics, could be hospital care. I use Buffalo as an example just because it's really easy. Buffalo is on the list. And if you have a whole bunch of people who need level 1 trauma care and that hospital's been sieged, the next closest level 1 trauma center is in Rochester. And it's a couple-hour drive, and you can only life flight so many people because a limited number of choppers capable of doing that. So now we're into triaging. We're into saying, okay, look, this person, if they don't get treated in the next 30 minutes, they're going to die. We can't get them to a level 1 trauma center within the next 30 minutes, move to the next person. And those buildings will be sieged for a period of time. It takes very specialized operators to unsiege buildings without killing everybody inside of them. The FSB, for example, in Russia, look at things completely opposite to the way we look at it. So if you look at the Chechen hostage situation at the theater in downtown Moscow in 2002. There was 900 and some odd hostages. These Chechen rebels were holding them. The FSB comes along, doesn't tell anybody else that they were pumping aerosolized carfentanil and remifentanil into the HVAC ductwork. So there are 1,400 analogs of fentanyl. Carfentanil and remifentanil are 100 times more powerful than the base analog of fentanyl. Out of the 1,400 analogs, we only have signatures on approximately 200 of them. But they released it. They did not tell anybody. And a whole bunch of people died that didn't need to die. They could have been treated with Narcan and resuscitated. And by the way, just to relate this to modern day, what's going on right now, 2026 in America, 80% of the fentanyl that was seized last year by law enforcement across the country was contaminated on purpose with xylazine. Xylazine is a horse tranquilizer. You can take all of the Narcan that you want. It's not going to stop that tranquilizer from stopping every organ in your body, your DRT. There is no way to be brought back from it. So we have preached to people, go to nextdistro.org and go to your state and they will send you free Narcan. You know what? The chance is maybe 1 in 5 that the person who's been exposed to fentanyl could actually be saved with Narcan because of the xylazine tranquilizer being in there. Long story short, is the Russians considered that a success. Yeah, we had a couple hundred people die, but that's just the cost of doing business, so to speak. We won't do that. So like Randy brought up, we could send in Green Berets, we could send in the Marines, we could send in Rangers. And the reality is that none of those teams are trained to go into siege situations and leave anything living. They are trained to go in and kill everything that moves. So when you talk JSOC and the Joint Special Operations Command, which is who led the Maduro capture, by the way, they have 2 Tier 1 assets at their disposal. Delta Team, SEAL Team 6. The other SEAL teams are not Tier 1 operators. But out of those 2, only Delta Team is trained to unsiege buildings with thousands of potential hostages and get the bulk of them out alive. Now, the problem with these hospitals is the sarin nerve gas comes back into play. They start booby trapping the ductwork, and our guys go in when the bad guys know that they're on the brink of losing the siege. Number one, they will all have suicide vests with dead man switches. So that means that if you shoot them and kill them when they fall over and die, the vest goes off and kills everybody in close proximity. But again, with things like sarin nerve gas, if that is triggered to go off in the ductwork, anybody who isn't in a complete suit is going to die. That's all there is to it. You're not surviving it. There's no antidote. There's nothing. There's no time frame like, oh, you've got X amount of minutes. It's 3 minutes and you're DRT dead right there. But anyway, what I'm getting at is this. You got LAPD SWAT team, which is probably like from a municipal perspective, the A team of SWAT that could handle unsieging a trauma center with 3,000 to 5,000 people in it. You've got the FBI HRT teams. There's 4 of them with 140 total assets. They're trained for this stuff, maybe not to the level of Delta Team, but good enough that you could probably deploy them to a couple hospitals to help unsiege them. But the rest will fall on the shoulders of Delta Team probably. And in that case, we're not unsieging these buildings, these hospitals in the blink of an eye. So what that does is that gives the jihadis the opportunity to use those hospitals as a home base to broadcast horrific videos of Americans being tortured, beheaded, murdered in other ways. It will be like a complete shit show that will shut down the entire country and paralyze America in fear. Now, the airplane component to this is based on a strategy that Osama bin Laden himself came up with in the mid-1990s called Bojinka. And you can look it up. It's a made-up word. It's not a real word. But the original plan was that Al-Qaeda terrorists would board planes, let's say in Dresden, Germany, and that plane would carry on to Heathrow Airport in London. During that leg of the flight, they would plant bombs underneath the seats. They would deplane. The planes would come to America, and Al-Qaeda would blow them up as they were coming in for a landing. So you end up with plane parts, body parts, luggage strewn all over the place. Not as high a death count as 9/11 1.0, but the terror aspect of it would just be unbelievable. So here's the next piece. Yes, Europe will play a part in this most likely. At least it's in the intel. Here domestically, we know that many airport authorities have been infiltrated by the Islamic Army. We arrested a couple in Miami at the airport who were working there for a period of time and uncovered they were both ISIS members that were going to be part of 9/11 2.0. We had a plane pilot write in, and I'm not going to say his name. I don't want to disclose who he is. He's one of our guardians. And initially he said to me, he said, hey man, like when these Al-Qaeda guys go through security and then they get on a plane and they hijack a plane in an American airport, they're not going to be very effective because you need somebody to push them away from the gate. And then I filled them in on the rest of the intel where those assets are already inside the airport. They will push the plane away from the jetway. They will get them to the runway so that they can take off and then fly at low altitude and detonate. And they will detonate with their invisible suicide vest, which is the same thing the guys from Europe will be wearing, because you can't detect these types of vests that are made out of plastic with liquid explosives with anything but a millimeter wave scanner. Less than 3% of American airports have millimeter wave scanners. So what does that mean? Well, they went through security in Europe on purpose so that when the investigation's done, it's like, holy shit, these guys skated right through security. They're going to do the same thing here. Same reaction. Holy crap, we're defenseless against this. TSA didn't have the tools they needed to stop these guys. The entire global airline business is shut down until there's an effective way to identify jihadis with these invisible suicide vests. So apologies for the long-winded piece of this, but I want to add this as well. 9/11 2.0 is not a one and done. This will set us on a course that will make us resemble the Middle East, where we have suicide attacks, like suicide bomber attacks, other types of terrorist attacks on a fairly regular basis. Again, you can argue the numbers all you want, whether it's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of terrorists admitted to America. We will be contending with this for many, many generations. And that dovetails into tonight's topic of Secession 2.0 post 9/11 2.0 and renewing pushes for independence and state sovereignty, which of course will fracture our national cohesion. And we've touched on some of this stuff, but 9/11 2.0 is not just going to expose security failures, it's going to expose governance failures, because when 10 to 15 cities are hit at the same time, the federal system can't respond evenly, and states are going to will move independently to protect their people and their infrastructure and their economies, and all of that will accelerate the break towards sovereignty, decentralization, and practical separation. In simple terms, if you want to put one word on it, balkanization. So segment number 1 of 5, I titled it "The Attacks Break the National Story." So when 10 to 15 cities get hit fast, again, the country doesn't just lose lives and infrastructure, it loses a shared sense of reality, and people start trusting what's close, what they can see, what's local and proven over what comes out of Washington, regardless of who's in the White House. As fear spreads and information gets weaponized, so that's the other part to this, right? With this, mix in the AI component, mix in the drones, and mix in, you know, the thing like when we were in kindergarten and the teacher whispered in your ear, blue, and you said blue to the person beside you, and but it got to the 20th kid in kindergarten, they said yellow. It'll be the same type of thing where there will be bots and there will be foreign agents that are essentially putting narratives out there that are complete and utter bullshit for no other purpose than taking the fear level to a whole new level for Americans. And I got to tell you, I've got to brag on this for a second. Our Guardian community, we have Guardians around the world, but especially across the United States. We have had situations where the legacy media is reporting on something in Portland, Oregon, and you've got people on X claiming that this, that, and the other thing's happening, but you don't know them. You don't know how much you can trust them. And we've had Guardians step in and say, hey, I live in Portland. I was there half an hour ago. I got the pictures, the videos. Here's exactly what happened. Our Guardian community completely short circuits any type of false reporting, disinformation, misinformation when it comes to any type of, terrorist attack, civil uprising, those sort of things. So with that being said, let me step back to, we've got fear spreading, we've got information that's being weaponized, and we've got some states with strong local leadership that will move quickly. And the gap in response speed is going to become the spark that turns normal federalism into sovereignty talk. Because, well, hey, how come when this went down in Florida, they were able to respond so fast and bounce back versus, I don't know, let's say Illinois, Minnesota, California, Washington State, Oregon, any of these blue areas? Because the fact of the matter is we will bounce back faster because we don't have all the bullshit, regulations. We're not trying to save the world from climate change that doesn't exist, blah, blah, blah. So at the end of the day, the longer that basic services are either unavailable or unstable, the more the public's going to start treating state lines like, it's going to show the distinction between those states that responded well and those that didn't. And things will only get worse for the ones who didn't. We've discussed this, how you will have people like Newsom. It's hard for me to say Newsom. My brain wants to go to Newscomb, but anyway, they will come out with all sorts of crazy, regulations. And I touched on one the other night ago that's a great example. So Southern California, the Palisades fires engulfed in flames. Oregon and Washington and other surrounding states send, firefighter teams to help battle the blazes. And Newsom's like, no, y'all have to go to San Francisco first, and you'll have to apply to get a permit, and you'll have to pass these EPA regulations. And, it's probably going to take a week, but when you get through that process, then we'll let you leave and you can carry on. That's the kind of shit that makes recovery extremely painful, more painful than what it needed to be in those types of jurisdictions. Call it the nanny state, whatever you want. But the problem is you got people, there's a lot of good people in California, don't get me wrong, but you have people there who the government says, you have to put a mask on and you can't leave your house, and make sure when you're driving by yourself down the interstate, you have your mask on, even though you're only by yourself. I'm exaggerating, but you get the point. There will be people who eat that shit up, and they'll be like, man, do whatever you need to do to save me from the terrorists. If it saves just one life, it's worth it. But some of you who've been following me for years are probably sick of hearing me say this. Every choice we make in life is the same. The first thing you do is decide what you want. The second thing you do is decide what you're willing to give up to get it. So for the sheeple amongst us who will be more than willing to sacrifice their civil liberties because of the illusion that the state can provide security against the jihadis, it'll be just like Charlie 19 on steroids. So at the end of the day, I would argue, as far as cohesion of states is concerned, that within the first month of 9/11 2.0, that will be enough time to show how stark the differences are between well-run states versus the regulatory heavy states. People talk, they'll be talking, they'll be sharing information, and people will be saying, well, man, we have a curfew and we're not allowed to work unless we can work from home, and all of our schools are closed down. And food has been rationed now because, there's a limited amount of groceries coming in. Pardon me. And you'll have people in states like Florida and handling it the same way we handled Charlie 19, where we did the thing, right? You know, we need to shut down for a week or two, whatever it was, to halt the spread. We didn't even do it for the whole time. We got maybe a week through it in Florida. And DeSantis, I'm not his biggest fan, but he just said, you know what? Yeah, we're not going to do this. There's no science behind it. Doesn't make sense whatsoever. People will communicate state to state, obviously, just to state the obvious. And people are going to be pissed at the end of the first month that we've turned a corner and that they haven't. So moving into segment number 2, I titled this Federal Power Surges, States Push Back. So after this nationwide terror, the federal government is going to tighten their grip on money, rules, movement controls, data demands. Like, they're going to want access to all of your data, which they mostly have right now as it is, but they'll want even more. They'll take us back to the Biden installation, where all the social media companies gave them backdoor portals where they could not only see everybody's information, but they could shadow ban you. They could delete your account. They could delete your comments. It was a Big Brother run amok, for lack of a better term. So the states are going to have to decide whether or not they comply, or if they're going to negotiate, or if they're going to resist based on, you know, what keeps their people alive. And if you want a really good example, Hurricane Helene is a really good example. FEMA completely dropped the ball. And there's many people who believe that FEMA was ordered to essentially drop the ball because the areas that were hit were heavy Republican / Donald Trump voting areas. And therefore, we're not going to give them the federal help. Could be a conspiracy theory, could be the real thing. I think there's an element of truth to it. And there's enough anecdotal examples that kind of back that up. But again, what happened is you had people come from out of state, like Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, good friend of mine, and they brought people from their churches. They brought people who were both National Guard as well as, you know, veterans that went above and beyond to help the people of East Tennessee and West North Carolina during Helene. And again, when you put agencies in charge that are crippled, is Trump making improvements? Yeah. Is Trump, you know, apparently he had a magic wand for the economy in his first term. I don't disagree with that. I like Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump 3 times, but I don't believe that he's the Messiah. And we've got so much institutional rot, call it the swamp, whatever you want. Don't think for a minute that there won't still be shady things going on, that Trump has said you can't do this, that, and everything. They're going to continue to do it. There was some lady yesterday at a university who got busted on hidden video, basically saying, well, you know, we changed the language, we changed the vernacular, so we're still full steam ahead on DEI. We're just calling it these other things. That's the institutional rot that I'm speaking of. So anyway, with that being said, you're going to have major parts of the country where people just feel, you know, the support is slow. Well, look at Katrina, for example. There's another good example. They're going to feel that the support is conditional. In other words, conditional on what they're willing to acquiesce to the feds. You're going to see a lot of politicized stuff as far as who's deserving of federal assistance, who gets priority. And you know what? The smart governors, they're going to start building their own parallel, you know, pipelines for fuel, medical supply. I mean, it's a bad pun mentioning fuel first, but parallel pipelines for fuel, medical supplies, trucking, communications, you know, anything that can deliver operational independence. And then that in turn will turn into political independence. So think of it from this perspective. If you live in a state like Florida where there's no income tax, and we rebound and we recover faster than anybody else, we get your life back to normal, you know, way faster than anybody else. And we start looking around at what the federal government is doing. Well, besides having a national military, what exactly are they doing for us? Why are we sending tax dollars to them when we're doing all the heavy lifting ourselves? That will become very pervasive, and that will be one of the things that drive states to say, you know what? And when I say secession, by the way, I want to clarify something. I don't foresee the United States of America, fracturing into 50 different countries. What I see is regions like the Southeast become a thing. You're going to see, the whole left coast, for example, will become a thing for the people who are not real Americans, TM Randy Nance. What will that do to people who are real Americans trapped behind enemy lines? That will further accelerate people exfilling California, Washington, Illinois, New York, etc., to go to areas that are more of their people. And that's when things start to get scary, because after balkanization and after the realization that we really don't need the feds, that leads to some ugly stuff, most likely civil war, that none of us want. None of us want anything like that. And I am not advocating that whatsoever. What I am doing is looking at history. He who forgets history is deemed to repeat its mistakes. There isn't one single instance in recorded history where two or more diametrically opposed cultures simultaneously occupied the same geography peacefully. It's never happened. It's never, ever happened. It's never going to happen. This whole diversity thing, we need to bring everybody under this big tent, is such complete and utter bullshit. We don't necessarily attract what we want. We attract what we are. And human beings are pack animals that go to their people. That's why for years we've had things like, Little Italy and Chinatown. In years gone by, they did a really good job of assimilating with us. But essentially, if you think of all the weirdos who tell you should accept everybody, only accept other weirdos, if you get what I mean. So the lines between the woke progressive states and the conservative states, not hard to draw, just based on the culture being so diametrically opposed. And like I said earlier, we are past the Rubicon. I've said this many, many times. People like me, I will never, ever extend an olive branch to anybody who thinks you can cut your genitals off and become the other sex, who think that there are 278 bullshit genders. That's not going to happen. These people are batshit insane. Many of them behave in straight up demonic ways. There will be no reconciliation. Unfortunately, that means potentially civil war that nobody wants. So at the end of the day, the more the crisis response looks like the states are doing a better job looking after themselves, the real American TM Randy Nance states, the more state sovereignty movements they're going to crop up and say, you know what, we should just break away. Why are we even part of, these lunatic states who can't even look after their own people? Do we really benefit by being part of this union anymore? And that's horrible. It's terrible. I do think that after balkanization and potential civil war, though, that there's a rebirth of America. I'll leave that for another episode. So segment number 3, I titled simply, Resources Become Borders. So once the supply chains fracture and the states that can secure energy, ports, refineries, rail, and trucking lanes, they'll recover first. Ones that can't will demand federal priority. Then they'll accuse the system of favoritism when they don't get it. And in that environment, sovereignty movements will grow by essentially promising control of all the essentials, power, water, food, security, and they'll pitch independence as the only way to stop being punished for someone else's failures. Minnesota, Tim Walz, Washington State, Portland, California. I mean, we were in the Seattle area last year to visit family, and I was absolutely gobsmacked that they have communities of homeless people living on I-5. There was one, I want to say it was like 10,000 people. There was another one in Olympia, Washington, that was called the Hobby Lobby Encampment, and it was a parcel of land beside a Hobby Lobby that wasn't developed, had several thousand of them in it. I mean, it was like seeing a third world country like Somalia. It just, my jaw dropped when I saw it. But getting back on target here, basically mutual aid will become a battlefield as well. So when I mentioned earlier that you've got a tier 2 city, doesn't have anything really big in close proximity to it to call upon for mutual aid, normally the way things go down is, a city is saturated. Their resources are saturated from a first responder perspective. They put out the call for mutual aid to everybody around them. So imagine, for example, Arlington, Texas was facing some sort of calamity. They would put out a call for mutual aid across the Metroplex. So everybody from Fort Worth to Grand Prairie to Dallas and other burbs of DFW would jump in and help. Well, now think of that in a macro scale. So think of that in terms of the states that are surrounding us. Let's just take the South, for example. So let's call it Texas to the Carolinas and South. So we would include Arkansas, Tennessee, and everything south from there. They will form compacts. I bet a dime to a dollar this will be what happens. And a compact will be, hey, we're all on the same page here. We've all turned the corner faster than those woke progressive states. Let's work together in all of our best interests. And that's where the mutual aid comes into play. You would have a mutiny here in Florida if the governor of Florida said, hey, we're going to send all of these resources and goods to, New Jersey, and because they need our help. But y'all are going to have to take it on the chin here in Florida because we need to do this thing. That would be eviscerated in no time whatsoever. So what's the next thing that comes out of that? A lot of this is kind of like building an airplane as you're flying so that you can eventually land it. You will have people wake up and go, we don't really need, we don't need federal resources. We don't need federal leadership. So why would you be sending them tax dollars that they spend on states like California? And at the end of the day, that makes you very self-sufficient. It makes us, from an operational perspective, extremely strong. And that feeds the whole aspect of secession. And those compacts essentially turn into, I don't want to use the word, but I'm going to have to use the word to describe the Southeast. You basically have the Confederate States of America coming back together again without any ideological splits on things like slavery and racism. We have a ton of people in the Southeast that doesn't matter where they're from, what color they are. We're more like the old United States in the Southeast than anywhere else in the country is. And people like myself have been saying for many, many days, I don't care what your skin color is. If you look at the world through a similar lens to me, then we're probably going to get along just fine. Again, if you think you could cut your genitals off, become the other sex, yeah, we're not going to get along, period. Full stop. No ifs, ands, or buts. So that's the end of the third segment. I've got two more segments to get us through here. Just one more shout out for our premium sponsors, Carnivalt, carnivalt.com. Use the code EATMEAT to get 10% off. That includes their dog stuff, which they've turned both my dogs into crackheads, like complete crackheads. It's unbelievable. Like right now, I just picked this up. My female rescue, who's been snoring over here, just lifted her head because she heard me pick up this can. And if you want to protect your pricing on beef in particular, if you sign up for a subscription at carnivalt.com before the 15th of the month, you will not see the 15% price increase, which they're just passing on from the wholesale side. And if they have a year like they did last year, where there was 49% year over year inflation on beef, you are completely protected and shielded from it. These guys might be a startup, but they are well enough capitalized that they can pull this off. They can do it, whereas many startups wouldn't be able to do that. Also, quick shout out to our friends at Wasatch Wagyu. This is the best jerky in the world. We use it on charcuterie boards. I make sandwiches out of it. If you look at how supple it is, it's unbelievable. WasatchWagyu.com. Use the code SD25, but it expires tomorrow night. That's 25% off. Then it's going to go back to SD20 or SD15, whatever they tell us it is. So with that being said, let's jump into the fourth segment, which I titled Competing Security and Justice Systems. So after coordinated terror, local leaders will prioritize protecting their own communities, duh. And when federal priorities clash with local realities, you get sanctuary policies, parallel enforcement, and competing definitions of public safety. And that's a big one there. So that gap will just continue to feed Secession 2.0 because, people will interpret inconsistent enforcement as proof that the national system can't be trusted. And they'll rally behind whoever can actually secure the streets, schools, and supply routes. I would argue that the states that essentially say we're not going to go for this politically correct bullshit any longer, and all y'all need to essentially profile, that will be the most secure parts of the country. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. So checking my 81-year-old mother's shoes at the airport makes absolutely zero sense. But hey, the jihadi who comes through, who probably, if you go to his social media, he's saying death to America, maybe that's the guy that you should be pulling in and giving a closer look to. And I believe that will happen in states where they're not penalized by the feds for saying, you know what, we're not doing this politically correct bullshit anymore. It's been a huge Achilles heel, and the jihadis are using it against us, right? So at the end of the day, again, whoever champions those things, especially the security aspect to it, is going to have support of their population. So, I mean, the legal reality, yes, very messy. Stakes are huge, but the psychological reality is really simple. If the public believes unity costs them safety, they will trade cohesion for control, especially under sustained threat. So moving on to segment number 5, I titled the final segment, The Survival Playbook in a Fractured Union. So the right move isn't panic politics, it's readiness. And panic politics is what they engage in California, Illinois, the same bad actors over and over again. So families should have been planning long before, but should be planning for uneven services, uneven rules, and with the goal of maintaining some element of mobility, staying informed, and staying supplied without becoming dependent on one thing that could potentially fail. So communities should already be building local resilience networks. Whether or not 9/11 2.0 was even a possibility, these are all things that will pay dividends in any type of calamity. Doesn't matter if it's hurricanes, winter storms, wildfires, whatever the case may be. And at the end of the day, churches played a huge role in the past. They still play a very big role in mutual aid. So think of mutual aid at the private level and not the government public level. Churches do a great job of that. We brought up LDS, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons last night or the night before, whatever it was, and how they circle around their people in need and help them, and they don't end up going to get welfare from the state. People need to have their comm stuff sorted out, and you can't just have one backup to your comms, right? You have to have multiple ones. Jason P is going to get a kick out of this, but it really boils down to what your budget is, okay? So if you don't have a whole lot of budget, one of the things that you can do, whether you're with T-Mobile, AT&T, or Verizon, is you can go to T-Mobile and tack on the Starlink package, not the Starlink package, to be a Wi-Fi hotspot, the Starlink package to use for comms, so that if all the cell towers and ground networks in your geography go down, you can still hit the these Starlink satellites, which will take your message back down to Earth to a network operations center, a NOC at Starlink, and then they'll pass it on ground-wise through ground networks that are functioning to whoever you need to communicate with. So that's like the cheapest way of having some element of backup, as long as the Starlink stays functional. You can also go and buy Garmin products like the InReach Messenger, the InReach Mini. They've come out with some newer versions that are pricey, but the Mini 2 and the Messenger, you can get anywhere from $150 to $250 on special right now. You can tether your phone. So basically, you know, the little Garmin InReach becomes your modem. And instead of connecting you to Starlink, it's connecting you to the Iridium satellite network. And same thing, it blasts it down to a network operations center and will push it the last mile to whoever you're trying to communicate with. In the grand scheme of things, they're pretty reasonably priced. It's a great backup. Then you can go to things like the dual mode radios, like the POC-Link radios, and there's links all over our stuff if you're interested in them. But essentially, they are analog and digital. So the analog side is FRS. It's the family radio channels. So 1 through 16 out of the 22 GMRS channels. And as per any other type of HT, which is a handset, you're not going to get the distances that you see advertised. Like Baofeng will throw a radio out there and say 35-mile range. Yeah, those radios aren't going to have a 35-mile range in any type of urban environment. If you're going to get anywhere close to that, you have to be in the salt flats, or at the very least, you have access to public repeaters to get anywhere. You know what? There's lots of repeaters in Florida. There's virtually none close to us. It's a non-issue. I don't want to trust somebody else's repeaters. And I'll wrap up the comm stuff in a second, but this is deep in my wheelhouse. Depending on the telephony company, the telco, so Verizon, AT&T, etc., and the infrastructure that they have around the country, LTE, which is also referred to as 4G, is not always meshed together with the same infrastructure as 5G. So there are multiple parts of call it the national network, cell phone network, where you could take down the 5G service, but the LTE will still be up and running. So those POC-Link radios on the digital side, they communicate over LTE, long-term evolution. And for what they cost, it's a great backup. It's good to have another comms tool, you know, in your bag, so to speak. The next level past that, if you buy GMRS radios, all of the channels are smoked by everybody in your area talking on their bubble radios that they got from Walmart, because they're FRS channels as well. They're good. GMRS and FRS radios, though, serve a really good purpose, spying on everybody around you when the shit hits the fan. Just turn it on, scan through the 22 channels, or 16 if you're FRS, and you'll hear everything that's going on around you. I've got a couple beside me right now for testing, and I've got an antenna that's like 53 feet high, UHF antenna, and I can pick up people's conversations all over this county, but it's all in the clear. And, you know, like I said, it's good for spying on people, but then you can get into business class licenses, Motorola's, Kenwoods, that have encryption. It's the only legal way to have encryption, OTA, over the air in America. And then you can go beyond that to your Walking Dead stuff, shortwave, HF. And Dr. Mike and I have been doing a ton of work on this. We've spent over $30,000 out of our own pockets to bring you guys stuff that's economical but works together without guessing as to what you should get. And I'm just going to give a shameless plug out there. Chameleon Antenna, we have bought almost every single product that they have. They sent us an MPAS, which is it's a very modular antenna system. That's the only thing they gave us, and we paid for everything else out of our own pocket. I'm telling you right now, if you are a shortwave HF enthusiast, you want to check out Chameleon Antenna. You may not even necessarily need to buy their antenna, but if you have a super antenna, MP1DXG, for example, which many people try to present as the best thing since sliced bread, it's okay, but it's not the best thing since sliced bread. There's a really hokey set of connections where you ground it out to your radials, and if you put it on their cheesy tripod, it flops around like a fish out of water and stuff. You can go to Chameleon and you can pick up what's called a blank. where you can screw it into this cylindrical unit called the blank that has an SO239 connector off of it, and it takes the MP1 to a whole new level. You can get a ring called a hub, so you can use banana connectors that push in and out of that hub instead of dicking around with the cheesy connectors that super antenna sends you. And you can take that super antenna and actually make it a super antenna. And by doing that, you're not blowing your budget on, thousands of dollars for a communication solution to communicate around the entire country. Stay tuned for that stuff. I do not have a relationship with Chameleon. I don't have discount codes. I don't get paid by them. But I'm telling you right now, go to chameleonantenna.com if you're into this stuff. Peruse what they have. If you have a question, you can email me at support@survivaldispatch.com. Do not send DMs to me. I get 300 to 500 emails a day. I respond to about 80% of them as best as I can. I do not check DMs on any platform. Occasionally my wife checks them and she lets me know, but you're not going to catch me that way. But I'm happy to share whatever information I can on the comm stuff as well. So reeling it back into wrap up here in segment number 5 is beyond the comms. You've got to have fuel stacked up. Propane tanks are great. Have a dual fuel generator, for example, that can run gas or propane. The problem with gas, when you store it, every 90 days, you got to cycle it out. You have to put stabilizer in it. You have to put octane booster in it. Propane tanks that you can hook up to the same generator. That's the way to go. You should have medical planning. You should have all kinds of medical stuff beyond just first aid kits. You should have, extra of whatever prescription meds that you take. You should have things like antibiotic kits. My personal choice is Jace Medical. There's other ones out there. They're decent. But if you go to survivaldispatch.news and you click the link on the right-hand side and take that link to Jace, they'll give you a discount. And it's not big. I want to say it's like 5%, but it's better than nothing. Anyway, at the end of the day, the trust that we will all have in our local infrastructure, our local agencies, our local governments in well-run states, conservative states, you can't buy that. You can't buy trust just like you can't buy respect. It's a pretty powerful currency. And I think that, unfortunately, we're already well down the road to balkanization. Like, we're well down that road. Here's the problem with balkanization and secession talks that will spike post 9/11 2.0. Right now, if somebody said to you, well, there's going to be a civil war in America between the woke and the real Americans, TM Randy Nance. Okay, where's the front line? That's part of the problem of this 5th generation warfare. We can't even identify where the battle lines are, where the front line is. When you have states forming compacts and saying we want to secede from the Union, you instantly now have borders, you have battlefronts, and unfortunately it cues up the prospect of civil war. Again, I'm not telling people that that's a good thing. I'm not telling you to kick it off. I'm not telling you to do anything violent. I mean, the only time I will tell you to be violent is defending yourself if you're in the right state, which is another good example. In Florida, we don't even have to, our life doesn't have to be in danger. If you sense that your life is in danger, you feel that your life is in danger, you suspect your life is in danger, and you use deadly force, and then it turns out it wasn't in danger, that's okay, because it's not okay maybe morally and those sort of things, but it's okay from a legal perspective because you felt your life was in danger. Try that in a woke state. You'll end up riding the friggin', you'll be riding a cot in a federal penitentiary in the blink of an eye. So that's the end of segment number 5. So at the end of the day, for tonight's topic, I would say the threat environment is clear. Centralized systems fail under coordinated attacks like this. So the action item is to harden your household, diversify your income, secure your mobility, and anchor yourself in a state and community that shares the same values as you, that values hard work, that values traditional American Christian values, which this country was founded on. Whether or not people want to argue that or not, they don't have a leg to stand on, but also lawful self-defense. Here's the other thing, too, for the people who are trigger happy. And I know it's not my audience. I know it's not our audience. But there's a lot of people. We've had some crazy comments since I acquired Survival Dispatch where somebody says, well, we don't prep. We're not stacking up anything because we don't need to, because when the shit hits the ground, shit hits the fan, we're just going to take whatever we want at gunpoint. And if we have to kill somebody for it, so be it. Some of that's internet bravado, but some of that is people telling you who they really are. And my message to those people, which probably won't hit any of them because they don't watch my podcast, is that there will be a reckoning. There is always a reckoning. You can't get away with shit like that in the long run. So, you got to have your head screwed on right. So at the end of the day, remember this: Secession 2.0 will not start with declarations. It's going to start with uneven recovery and competing systems after 9/11 2.0. And if you're physically able to, I would tell you to train like your life depends on it as best as you can, because it does. So with that being said, favorite time of the night for me, I love this here. 3, 2, 1. All right, the Carnival Hero of the Night. This is just awesome right here. We need more children raised like this young man. Owen Burns, the 13-year-old hero from Michigan, who saved his 8-year-old sister from being kidnapped with a slingshot. He struck the kidnapper on the chest and head by firing marbles and a rock from his slingshot. Right on. Kudos to this young man, Owen Burns. That is just freaking awesome. I absolutely love to see that. So let's hit the conflicted question. A group of refugees appeared at the barricade near Morgan's house one day begging for food and water. They were given little and asked to leave. Some of the refugees were upset they weren't given more. Judging by their attitude, they would probably be back, this time to try take things by force. If you were at the barricade that day and you were faced with this situation, how would you handle it? Well, there's never complete context around these conflicted questions. So you kind of have to roll with stuff maybe that you're imagining could be possible. How would I do it? A show of force, an absolute show of force. So if we've just given them some charity and they're bitching and moaning and complaining, and we suspect that they're going to come back and try to take more of our stuff, we're going to show them an absolute show of force that basically says, you don't want to mess with us because, we gave you some stuff. We're trying to be nice, do the Christian thing. But, that won't extend to you trying to steal from us or to attack us, number one. Number two, I don't know how much of a threat these people would really be, because you guys have heard me say this before. You can't fight if you're hungry. So if my team has a defensible position, we have weapons, we have food, and the other guys are going to try to launch an attack against us, and they could have the weapons. Let them have the weapons. They could have weapons, but if they don't have the food and water and nourishments and things that we do, their capacity to unseat us, to damage us is very mitigated. But at the end of the day, flexing works, just like we just flexed on Venezuela. I'm telling you right now that the heads of the militaries in China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia are shitting their pants right now that we unleashed technology that they had no idea that we had. We shut down the frequencies to every frickin' thing that the Russians and Chinese put into Venezuela for suppose they can detect F-22s and lock on them. Yeah, bullshit. And now they know it's bullshit. That's how we skated in and out. Show of force works. People will always attack the target that's the least hard of all the targets. So in other words, somebody looks at your house, you've got a security system, you got dogs, you got motion detection lights, they see sirens maybe on your soffits, they see you've got like a decorative steel door in front of your man door, all those sort of things. They look at your neighbor and your neighbor has none of those things. You think maybe they're going to go and attack the neighbor? Target hardening works. It works really, really well. Now, I haven't been able to follow the chat tonight because I'm hosting and, talking, blah, blah, blah. I thought I saw a couple people go by with tips. Thank you very much, whoever you were. It's very much appreciated, and I appreciate all y'all very much for that matter. So we will be back tomorrow night at the usual time. Actually, before I go to that, don't forget our sponsors. So wasatchwagyu.com, SD25, best jerky in the world. And I'm telling you right now, man, Josh Bryant is a good friend of mine. Josh Bryant is like the preeminent subject matter expert in the entire world on strength conditioning. And he will tell you straight up that when he puts his athletes on beef versus chicken or fish, their performance absolutely skyrockets. So for those of you who don't know, my alter ego, I used to compete on our national powerlifting team. I've set all kinds of world records, national and state records in powerlifting. And I'm telling you straight up that regardless of things like performance enhancing drugs that are heavily used in powerlifting, having the best food in your system will make the biggest difference as far as your physical performance is concerned. So carnivalt.com, if you can afford to sign up for a subscription, they start at barely over $100 a month. At least you have something locked in at the old price before the price goes up January 15th. If you buy stuff that's not on a subscription, Eat Meat gets you 10% off. Again, Wasatch Wagyu, SD25. If you miss any of this, support at survivaldispatch.com. Be happy to share that. All of those discount codes with you there. So again, we'll be back tomorrow night, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, with the next episode in our Long War series. And it's titled Parallel Law Enforcement and Sanctuaries. The theme is competing justice systems. So the summary is local jurisdictions defy federal authority enforcing their own rules and protections. So I want to thank all y'all out there who support Survival Dispatch News, especially our Guardian subscribers. Go to survivaldispatch.news if you want to check out our Guardian program. You get access to all of our encrypted signal channels, which we're in the process of moving to. I built our own Element server, which is built on top of Signal, ultra secure. I think we got 10, 11 channels in there now. It's a completely secure, private environment. Can't be deplatformed. It's my server. The only thing that could happen to us is the feds could say to the ISP, disconnect that server from the internet. If they do that, I get images of the server are automatically made and stored every few hours. I can have our server back up and running anywhere in the world within 3 hours. I have 3 contingency data centers already outside of the country if they try to shut us down like they did to Parler. And unlike Parler, our stuff's not public. You have to be a Guardian to get access. It's all encrypted. And I run background checks on people based on their phone numbers. I'm unaware of anybody else who has anything similar to what we've got. We're in a soft launch for Element right now, but it's the community that matters. You get access to an absolutely amazing community. The knowledge that's shared just blows my mind. So, final swing at this. I appreciate all y'all. I appreciate our Guardians. I appreciate our sponsors that allow me in particular to work 15, 16, 17 hours a day, 7 days a week. No exaggeration from anybody who knows me. Couldn't do that. If we didn't have the sponsors, I couldn't do that because I'd have to be punching a time clock somewhere. But anyway, at the end of the night, this is Chris Evans signing off. God bless America. God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our troops. And enjoy the closing video.
My SDN brothers and sisters, shall we pray? Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to come before you, Lord, to raise our petitions to you. Lord, as we start a new year, I do pray, Lord, that we would search you out, seek your face for wisdom, for understanding, for prudence, for guidance in this day and age. Lord, so much going on around us. You know, there's so many issues within our world. But even so, Lord, I pray that we would be prepared for the day that may come upon us, the day of evil. Even so, we just pray, Lord, your protection upon us. Lord, would you watch over us and keep us safe? Lord, be with those that are in authority, that you may guide and direct their lives, that they may protect us from the evils of this world. But even so, Lord, we pray that you would help us to be ready spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally for the day that is coming upon us. Lord, we pray for peace. We ask that as we serve the God of peace, that peace would be upon our land. Lord, we also know that there are things that are going on around us that would make us wonder. Pray, Lord, to the God of peace that you may give us peace individually, spiritually. Lord, that we might not be wavering, that fear might not overtake us. But even so, Lord, we just pray that you would guide and direct our hearts, our thoughts, our minds. Give us wisdom, give us prudence, give us direction, give us knowledge, the things that we need during this time. May we not be reactive, but may we be proactive. And again, Lord, thank you for your goodness to us. Thank you for your mercy and grace. And again, Lord, I pray specific hedging about of my brothers and sisters. Lord, I pray that you would get the glory through it all. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.